It's time for another Ballpark Digest broadcaster chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. I'll be joined by Mick Gillispie. Mick, the voice of the Tennessee Smokies and spring training voice of the Chicago Cubs. I do the radio and the media relations for the Lansing Lugnuts. And we are just about set to go. We're going to be talking about baseball. It's the fun part about it. We've got baseball lingo to discuss. Our slang term this week is the snow cone or the ice cream cone, depending upon who you are. We also have, let's say, some great classic calls to bring up, and today we're going to go back to the old series. Let's bring Mick in. Let's add him in, and that way we can start talking about the different parts of the game. And we'll be telling some more anecdotes this week. My thinking is this week we'll be telling some animal stories about how animals have gotten involved. Hey, Mick, how are you? I can hear you
Can
perfectly.
You hear me? All right, good.
Welcome back. Here we go. Let's start off the agenda running. And so our baseball slang this week is the snow cone or the ice cream cone.
Saw one of those yesterday in a game. It's when the ball's like, kind of coming out of the glove, but like you can see like the ball, right? But it's in there. But if it gets popped one bit, the cone, like when you have an ice cream cone, sometimes the ice cream falls off, right? So it's there, but you better be real careful.
It was something that I probably first learned about as a kid playing the game. There are certain terms which I'll hear simply from watching, talking as a fan, but I don't know about you. I snow coned it, and as coming running back to the bench, that was what my coach termed it. It's that specific kind of catch. I think that has become a universal term across the country. Snow cone or ice cream cone. I love the specific designation for here's what it is and here's why. You barely caught it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even think about that. I've always called it snow cone. But in my mind, I've always pictured an ice cream cone, so you get to talking about it. It's like, I guess they're two different things, right? The snow cone, same thing though. You got the ball on top of the glass instead of, where the cup instead of on the cone, right? But I mean, we say snow cone, but I've always thought like, like of the cone that you eat with the ice cream. So stupid.
Are there any other words or phrases or terms to describe any other kind of catch? I mean, there's the basket catch or backhand, not talking about that. Simply talking about the way that you catch the ball in your glove. That's one. Are there any other kinds? That's the only one that comes immediately to mind for me.
Yeah, you said the basket catch.
Right, right there.
Like that. The snatch catch, that was made very famous by Ricky Henderson. Like when the ball's coming and you just like, snatch it, so that's one. And I'm sure there's other ones. I don't know why I'm just like blanking out.
One that I read about a ton as a kid from all the old stories that I just don't hear used as much anymore is the shoestring catch.
Oh, yeah, I use that one. Yeah, see, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's because, Chuck Thompson used to say that. Chuck, the running, shoestring catch, right?
Got it right over the shoestrings or right over the shoelaces.
Yeah.
And then you can go to football with the terms of a different way that a receiver can catch it. So I think about the over-the-shoulder catch. But the snow cone specifically describing, you can catch it however you like, but that ball's got to almost pop out. Like that fear of that ball's scored away from you, so you better hold on tight with the bottom third.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. And now I'm going to think about it. I've got a game today and I'll in my mind, and I'll probably be like, okay, you know what? I mean, had to be more than just that, diving catch, like, could that be one? But yeah, you're right. I mean, like of all those type of catches, the snow cone is the one that I think that just is kind of like universal visualization. And then for some reason, I always thought I'm thinking ice cream cone, even though I'm saying snow cone until today. You just brought that up.
Something I appreciate about that. I'm calling basketball right now in Cleveland at the same time that you're calling baseball in the American Southwest. and there was a killer play, a three-pointer to tie the game to end regulation and force overtime. Exciting. And so there's the shout, there's the call, we're going to OT. And I'm listening back to a lot of different calls about those dramatic moments. And one thing that I appreciate is, as you say, the visualization. And to tie it back in a snow cone, anything that you say that describes exactly what happened, but also for anyone who can't see it, they can then see it in their mind's eye. That to me is the crux of it. If you can
Right.
get both of those at the same time, the excitement plus here's what it looked like, and you don't overload the senses,
Yeah.
that's it.
I think Vince Scully was the best I ever heard with descriptive words that played into the broadcast. And I mean, look, that's years of doing it, but you could really close your eyes and picture everything that was going on, you know, and then he would add the stories in there. And it's crazy the amount of stories he had on guys. I mean, I've tried to go down and do that. And I heard he had, you know, some people that helped him, you know, kind of get some stories and, you know, good facts and stuff about players. I mean, the guys will talk. It's just finding the time to get them to talk.
I heard
you
a
know?
story.
So, I mean, like,
The story that.
no, I was just going to say that it's like his ability to, you know, to like use words to describe things like you were saying was unbelievable.
About the telling of the anecdotes of the players, what I had heard about Vin Scully was that he had a different note card for each guy. And on that note card, he would write anecdote, 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 anecdote. And then when he'd use the story in the game, he would then make a notation of the date that he used that story. And so you could always go back to it and say, have I used this story yet? No, let's use it today. When was the last time I used this story? I used
Right.
it all the way back then. I can tell a quick refresher today. It's been long enough.
Yeah. And remember, when it comes to like broadcast stories, you can take the same story and emphasize different points in the story and use it over, right? But it's just a different way. I mean, like, you could talk about, like, say, Ernie Banks, right? You could talk about his 500th home run, right? What the pitch was, what the weather was like, you know, or you could talk about his 500th home run and, you know, go a different direction, how his family was dealing with it, the pressure, the media. You could talk about, on another day, the significance of that 500th home run, what it meant to the Cubs, you know, like that. There's so many, and you could tell the same story, meaning that you could have the same principle that you're covering, but kind of in a pop fiction way, go at it in a bunch of different angles,
Absolutely.
right?
Takes on a new context each time, and especially if you give someone listening into the game that extra dimension to that batter, that extra dimension to that pitcher. Here's what makes them important, or here's something to tie it in. And that's where I think you add that depth into the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why it's good to have those anecdotes, you know, like where you can go back and think, okay, well, you know, I told it this way, but, you know, when I was getting the information, I got it from, I don't know, maybe his dad, you know, and his dad said that that particular day he was on his truck route and he was over here, you know, so it's like you could take that information and use it more than once. And when you're, you know, kind of in our spots, you know, like the Smokies play the same team 19, 20, 25 times. I mean, you know, you may, if it's a guy on another team, have 25 chances to talk about them, or if it's your team, you see them every day, right? I mean, eventually you're going to need something, right? I mean, the way that you know, everyone kind of lays it out, but part of it's telling the player story. So it's good to have that stuff. You don't want to use it once and just crumple it, throw it away, because it's so
There was a
valuable.
reliever on West Michigan last year who had survived cancer, who had beaten cancer. And so, very first time we saw him over the course of the season, here's the great story. Here's everything that happened when he was afflicted, how he beat it, everything that's come about since then. But every time after that we saw him this year, it just felt worth it to put in just a little sentence. Survivor of this. Here's who this guy is. Here he comes in, big
Right.
situation. He's faced bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I've got our famous calls of the week. And You're a Cubs guy, Double A voice of the Cubs, spring training voice of the Cubs. We're gonna go first. It's gonna have the happy ending of the Cubs, but I'm going to go Tom Hamilton. World Series 2016. Aroldis Chapman on the mound, and Rajai Davis is the batter.
Oh, I've never heard this.
Two outs. Geyer at second. 6-4. Cubs leading the Indians. Game 7 of what has been a classic World Series between two teams that have longed for that championship more years than any other two franchises in baseball. 68 years for the Indians, 108 years for the Cubs. Now the pitch. Swung and line to deep left field. It is gone! You should see the celebration out of the Indians' third base dugout. Rajai Davis, a bullet, 2-run homer down the left field line, clearing the 19-foot wall. We are tied at 6.
Tom Hamilton, Rajai Davis. One of the greatest moments that didn't end up helping its team win the World Series. So it might get lost as time goes on, but in my opinion, we should not forget that as a postseason home run.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to hear how Tom Hamilton called the last out of that World Series. I've never heard that. You know, I've heard Pat Hughes's call. I heard the TV call. I'm just curious. Like, I wonder how, you know, like that would have sounded. I think Tom's an excellent broadcaster. I love the fact that he's not like everyone else. And we've got so many cookie cutters in our business now. Not Tom. You know, he goes on there. He brings the energy. You know, he brings the passion to the game. He's great.
That moment, and talking about the visualization, describing the height of the wall and the bullet so you can picture line drive, no arc on it, setting the stage before the call even happened with the history of the two franchises. And that, to my mind, is the call.
Yeah, it was an amazing moment.
Well, I don't have Tom Hamilton, but you know what I've got.
Deep in center, Hayward not quite as deep in right. A little bouncer swiftly toward Bryant. He will glove it, throw to Rizzo. It's in time, and the Chicago Cubs win the World Series. The Cubs come pouring out of the dugout, jumping up and down like a bunch of delirious 10-year-olds. The Cubs have done it.
Like a bunch of delirious 10-year-olds.
Yeah, and forever. When we think of that moment, you know, those are the words that Pat chose to frame the Cubs ending what some called the curse of the GOAT. It was a great World Series, 2016. And, you know, it's a shame that one of the teams had to lose. But, you know, Pat's one of the best in the business. So smooth. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. So, honestly, I think Tom Hamilton belongs there. As well, you know. So I mean, it's like those guys are two of the best, and they frame those moments up. I love on Hamilton's call, you know, it's like Rajai Davis down the line, like boom, and then you know he just kind of
fireworks
out of it. And for Pat, yeah, but Pat, it's like that's a tough spot to be in, you know, like you're there, and you know, like you can't get this one wrong. Like, you just got to get it right. So I'm sure for Pat, there was a sense of relief, you know, just you're not even as excited that you got it. You're just happy that you didn't mess it up, you know, even though why would he mess it up? He doesn't mess much up at all. But I mean, just saying, like, in your mind, you know, you just don't, God, can you imagine if you messed that one up? You know, so I'm sure that's a relief when you do a great job.
About us and about our jobs. I got less nervous when broadcasting, when thinking about, oh, what am I going to say? How is this going to be remembered? When I can get away from that and just reflect everything that everyone feels who is listening to me. I mean, Mick, you as the voice of the game, the voice of the spring training Cubs, or let's take you as the voice currently of the Tennessee Smokies, reflecting the feelings of Smokies fans and the family members of the players. I love the Tom Hamilton. You should see the dugout. You should see basically voicing what everybody is feeling right now through the reflection of how the players are feeling and how the fans are feeling. We are all sharing this together.
Yeah, that's true. And like when radio first started, you didn't really have TV as an option, right? Well, now you do. And so even like if we make a great call in spring training, MLB will put it up on their website, but they always put the video with it, So it's like, here we're on the internet. We're not on the radio. We got great listenership. There's a lot of people that see the score. We're taught to give the score every 3 minutes, right? I think you do that because I think that's the way that it's done, right? But eventually it's like things are going to change some because, eventually it's going to be probably more mediums like this and less, like radio, kind of terrestrial radio formats, and I guess, I mean, eventually, like, maybe saying the score all the time, it's really going to matter because they're going to be able to see it, when you're watching TV, I always think about that stuff, but, still just, going back to those calls and kind of where we were there, it's like going through the emotions. And you talked about connecting with your audience, like I feel like I've done a good job of that. That was one of the, I feel like one of the traits that I have as a broadcaster that I'm proud of. And I've got great audiences on top of it too, great fans. But I mean, it's like, what is it that connects you to that audience? It's like, it's not the giving the score and all that stuff. It's like you being able to kind of throw out what you do and tell the story. Like for me, it's like, hey, we're sitting at a bar here, Jesse, you order, an old fashioned, I'll get a margarita. Let's sit here and watch the game. Right. And I think that's what people like, feeling like, hey, these guys are cool. I'd hang out with them.
My thinking is the score and everything else that's necessary is like a foundation for a house. You need to make sure that everything is structurally secure. And then from that's where you build and decorate how you want. That's where you put your furniture. That's where you say, this will show my personality. That's what I love is the broadcast where the words live forever. And just even bringing this beyond broadcasting, if I say anything is possible, sports fans understand that I'm referring right to Kevin Garnett after the Celtics won the finals. If I say, go crazy, folks, go crazy, it is understood I'm talking about Jack Buck. That we can put a stamp on matters with just those words. Whatever those words are that we use in that moment can live forever. And specifically in my memory, I was broadcasting with Jim Tocco in the Southern League, and he said, see you later on an Evan Longoria home run. That afterward, at the bars that night and the nights remaining in the week, wherever we would go, people around Alabama would shout at us and shout with us, see you later. I just remember the sound ricocheting off the walls of everybody thinking, hearing that, and it stuck with them, associating it with the joy of the moment.
Yeah, you talk about Jim Tocco, our friend, our mutual friend. He's one of the guys in this business that when he left and he doesn't do broadcasting anymore, I really thought he'd get there. Like I thought people in Montgomery loved him. And the other broadcasters that came in after him never found that same connection, and there were some really good ones. But Jim was really good. Right. And I mean, it's like, whatever it is, like, you're right. It's like, I would walk out of the stadium with him, and people would go love him. They would come up and, hey, Jim, Toko. That'll be like, wow, like this guy's really like beloved here, And I figured that eventually Tampa Bay would find a spot for him. Because there was just a certain magic that he had, that he could do
bet
this.
If you asked ball players, they would say the same thing. They would say, I can't believe this player didn't make it. A teammate that they had, a guy that they played against, where they said, that guy. But the guys who follow Jim, first John Laser is now the voice of the Virginia Tech Hokies. So he's found his spot. And then how about Joe Davis following up Laser and Toko, and then following up Vin Scully?
Yeah, Jim. I mean, maybe in a way Montgomery's a good kind of transition to something like that, because as good as Joe is, I mean, like, people still at the time, like they were like all about Jim Toko, right? So, you look at it and you go, okay, like that you're put in spots sometimes in life to learn. But when you replace Vince Scully or he retires and you take over, and that's like the Cubs winning the World Series after, 108 years kind of in broadcasting, because there's never going to be a better guy. And you have to handle that, right? Which he's done a fantastic job of, but you just have to deal with it, that you're never going to be as good as the guy that was there before you. But that's not a shot at you. None of us are ever going to be as good as the guy that was there before you, right? So, pretty crazy career for him, but, he's super talented, and he's earned it.
The whole idea of familiarity. It's for as much talent as a broadcaster can bring, or the great voice, or the intellect, or whatever it might be, there's no substitute for people finding you familiar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's our business right now, too. If ESPN puts you on one of their telecasts, I don't care what you sound like, people recognize your name, and all of a sudden you go to the front of the line, which is, like, I mean, we all kind of have to work for ESPN, so it's like, you don't want to say too many negative things about ESPN, but, they're kind of like, into the cookie cutter guy, because, and I get it. Like, they don't want anyone to kind of stray off from, from going and, doing the job, but, at the same time, it's kind of created this, everyone the same, so the way that you get there now is, obviously if you're young and you're getting into this business, try to sound just like the next guy, try to sound like the next guy and get on ESPN, and then that'll lead you to something
Let's
else.
bring this back to Tom Hamilton with his call as centerpiece, because we've discussed broadcasters in the past too. There's nobody like them, right? There's nobody like a Marty Brennaman or like a Harry Carey or a Jack Buck, and right on down the line. Tom Hamilton, for better or for worse, depending upon whether you love him or maybe you don't enjoy listening to him, what generally is the dividing factor, right, is his excitement and his energy. That you never doubt that he cares, and he's going to let you know exactly what he feels.
Yeah. People would tell me, like, when XM came out, that hadn't heard, and including myself, Tom Hamilton, like, you gotta hear this guy. You'd love him, and I'd like you hear him, I'm like, yeah, I do love this guy, like, but I mean, how many people like me are obsessed with like a radio broadcast, with doing radio? Most of us, like most people, watch TV, so, but I enjoy it a lot. And so, and so do you, and I'm sure a lot of us listening right now are kind of in that same thing. Hey, we just love, there's a part of us that no matter what, we just want to hear the game, right? And having a good personality like Tom on the radio call makes it easier to go back. Like every time you turn around, they're like, wow, radio, it's kind of forgotten, da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, well, what kind of broadcast are you guys throwing out there? Well, we got one good broadcaster and another guy, he's been here a long time. Like, yeah, okay. Well, the product that you put in front of your fans is, I mean, really, it's to me, it's important, because if it's not good, and maybe they're really smart guys and they can do, they can craft things and they know the team, but if they can't go on there and connect with the audience and entertain and tell the story, why would anyone want to sit there and listen to that?
Let me use the word care, and let's use that in a lot of different ways. The ball players, the manager, they want you to care. They don't want you to be detached. The fans want you to care. The people who work in the front office, the brass, want you to care. It's just right on down the line. Now, the way that they use the word care, their notion of it might be different for each one, but as long as you care about it, that is such an enormous step.
Yeah, and you can tell when people don't care. I listened to a guy, calling big league games last year, and I mean, you could just tell it's like, deep fly ball to right, guy makes a great catch, and it's not like, God, and then you go back and watch the video, and it's like over the wall, bro. It's like, what? But sometimes you've been in this so long that maybe you don't appreciate kind of that it's Major League Baseball. This particular guy, got a pretty easy ride into the big leagues. Maybe he doesn't realize how difficult it is to get there for the rest of us. That don't have the fast pass, meaning, maybe someone we're related to isn't in a high spot to get us right to the front. I mean, I don't know. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy to be there, why would anyone be happy to listen to you?
I think there's this too that we, well,
I mean, right?
Yeah. We also have to battle through something important. It's a long season. We call a lot of games. How many fly balls do you see? How many ground balls do you see? And so you have to look inner to find that energy on a day-to-day basis, when it's hot or when you're tired or when it's another day in a row, and when you don't feel subconsciously or perfectly consciously that anything's going to happen at right now in the game. I might feel to myself, I might be saying, all right, I'm into this. And then a new player will be added to the team who is just special. And I'll realize how much more engaged I feel when they come up to the bat or when they step foot on the mound, that there's just a raising, a heightening of the level of my interest even there that I didn't even realize was absent.
Right. Yeah. Well, it takes those things, when you get a good prospect, or, I try to talk to my staff at the beginning of every season and say, I want the same energy game that we have game 1. It's not hard to get ready for game 1, game 20, game 100, game 130, and game 140. I want it throughout that consistency throughout the season. I mean, and I've been guilty of, kind of feeling at times like it's hard to bring it. And what I started doing was, the mentality when I got in this was always, okay, you're going to do every single game. You don't take a day off. I miss weddings and funerals and birthdays and vacations and all that stuff. And I don't agree with that anymore. And I think, look, take time for yourself, get away, because there's someone else that you have that can sit in and fill in and make and run things that day. And you're going to be better off when you're back on the air again, right? I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that it's like you make it a grind when you don't take care of yourself, right? I mean, I don't know how it is in the major leagues because, I've only done spring training. I've done a lot of spring training. So, I mean, I guess I kind of know what it's like, but I don't know what it's like in the regular season. I haven't done that. I know what it's like in the minor leagues. And there's some weddings, some funerals, and some birthdays that I missed that I still think about. And I couldn't tell you who the team was playing that day. Well, who'd you miss the game for? Well, the Smokies were playing the Mudcats or something. I don't know. That tells you all you need to know, right? As a young broadcaster. I'm not saying take a month off. you only have, you have 140 games. I'm saying that through the course of 140 games or 162 games, if you miss 10 or 11 games to go to family events and vacations but you bring it every time you're on the air, it's well
I
worth it.
totally agree. I think that's a very important point about the self-care and the thinking outside of the job, especially not letting things blend together when it comes to things more important than you, especially being there for your family.
Yeah.
Boy, um, that's something when I think back upon it,
Well, you took
yes.
off. Yeah, and you take off for religious holidays, and I think that's great. Like, you should, right? I mean, if it's something that means that much to you, and then you should do that. And I'm sure there's guys that are going to watch this and go, well, I don't agree with that. Maybe the more old school
And to each their
folks,
own.
not just religious holidays, but whatever, right? But I think that's like friends of mine that are Jewish that miss games. At the end of the season, there's a holiday. What is it? Yom
Yes.
Kippur. Am I
Yes.
close? Is that it? See, look at that. And I have a lot of respect for that. And I think, like, at the end of the day, you're gonna remember the fact that you upheld that commitment to your religious values, and not that you missed the Lugnuts and whoever, right, for one day. Get back at them the next day.
The Blue Jays, I don't know about the Cubs, several years back installed a rule that every member of the coaching staff had to take off a mandated 4 days of their choice during the season.
Yes, Cubs do that too. Yeah, and it's a great rule. I think that's a great rule. But when I got into it, we didn't do that. Which I think is, like, with your mental health, we love the game. We get so wrapped up in it. We're in our own world in baseball. It's good to kind of step out of that and have those 4 days. I've noticed that coaches will take, like 4 days right at the All-Star break, so it turns into like a 7, 8 day. Our front office, the Smokies front office, has been so good to me. Like, I have worked for the best, and I've missed games for vacations, which aren't very often. I've missed a lot of games doing TV, like where I'm off doing TV, and they've never had a problem with that. And I appreciate them so much. But there's been times where I've been like, look, I haven't had a day off and I'm talking about a real day off, not a travel day, in 2 months. You add spring training in there, it's 3 months. And I there's maybe a stop in our league that isn't great. I don't want to go. And I got a young guy over here that would love that opportunity. Boom, you go do it, And then by the time, like, I miss 5 games or 3 games, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go, honestly, the next day. Like, I take off and I'm like, oh man, I'm ready, But then it's great to have that time with my family or with, just kind of away from the entire scene.
I compare it to running on a treadmill. If you're running on a treadmill, nobody questions that at some point you'll have to stop running because you get tired. The same thing happens with our brain.
Right. Yeah, no doubt, man. And I mean, like, that's it. I love your comparisons. I've enjoyed these conversations just because I like talking to you about broadcasting. And it's funny. I've never thought of it like that. But your brain does get tired. I mean, you do, like, say you get there, right? And your best broadcasts are like first, like, week of the season. And then because you're fired up, and then all of a sudden you'll have that, like, I don't know if this is you, but this is me anyway. And then you'll have those games where you're like, oh my goodness, I was terrible tonight. Like, what was I thinking? Or I said this and I didn't mean to say that, or it's like, what, like, I forgot this and because your brain gets tired, just like anything else. And then you kind of get into, like, a rhythm, right? After that, like, this is every season. You get into a rhythm, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm getting, how much sleep you need. For me, it's like getting outside, walking, getting my exercise, kind of getting into that baseball everyday rhythm, and your team, you know your team so well, right? So then you get back into that groove, and then all of a sudden it's like 80 games in, and you've had like 3 days off, and you're like, I'm tired right now. And then, you know, and then you get to game 100. I don't really know if it is game 100, but for me, it's between game 80 and 100. And you're just like, I'm ready for this to be over. And then all of a sudden you catch that second win, or maybe your third win, and the season ends and like you're depressed for 2 weeks. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a crazy cycle. I mean, do you have that?
I got another comparison for you, because that's me. I hit the wall in May. I hit the wall in July. And both walls, once I get through them, oh, I feel good. June hit, and then All-Star break. Yeah. All right, here we go. And then once I get through July, then it's the stretch run. It's the end of the season. And then I'm feeling really good as the weather gets back to being comfortable and we get through all the heat. Okay, comparison for you. My voice, especially when it's strong, that's my fastball. How good the voice feels, how good my energy is, that's my fastball right there. My command of the language, how well I'm talking, how well my brain and my mouth are clicking, that's simply control. That's command. And then any little tidbit or story I've got is a curveball. And so I'll come out in some games, and the fastball will be there, but the command is off. Or the command will be dead on, but the fastball velocity is a little low today. It's a dead arm period. Or I might come out and I've got fastball and command, but my curve just isn't working.
Yeah, I got you, man. That's a good way to describe it. I kind of break it down like, you know, like you do the fundamentals, right? And then you got your, you know, fundamentals meaning like, you know, batting average, guy's name, you know, all that stuff. And then there's days where you're like, and I've never put pitches next to them, but your ability to be descriptive. You know, like when you go descriptive, and then you have your anecdotes and your stories. And then for me, I have a news element to mine. You know, I always enjoyed like Robin's news on Howard Stern, you know, or she would just kind of come in and like, you know, have her spin on the news, you know. And so since I've always been on sports stations that do talk, and now, you know, we're moving to a new station, it's a talk station. Like, I feel like that's what the audience, if I'm going to keep the people that aren't necessarily there to hear this minor league game, that I need to have like some kind of like talk element to it, you know, and people like it, you know, and it's like, I think that's the direction of our business on radio, because I just, you know, as far as baseball broadcasting, once the executives can move kind of past, you know, hey, we got to have so-and-so because everyone knows his name, and gets into like style and substance, I think that's what they're really looking for, because I think that there's a younger generation of baseball fans that they want kind of more than just, you know, the slow, methodical baseball broadcast, right?
I think it's not just that generation. I think it's any listener would like the game plus. And I really do think, you know, if you're succeeding as a broadcaster, if someone says, I can't miss Mick's broadcast, or if they're there even watching the game and going, I wonder what Mick is saying right now.
Hey. Yeah. Hey, the best compliment that you get is when someone stops you and says, I couldn't get out of my car. That is the number one compliment. Where it's like, you know, the bases were loaded and it was the 8th inning, and, you know, you were saying that this guy that I nicknamed guys sometimes, you know, we had this guy, Matt Spencer, I called the Morristown Masher. And the funniest thing was Jim Adducci is with the Cubs now. He was on that team, and we're talking, and he's talking about, you know, like just the players that we were with. And he goes, and the Morristown Masher. And I was like, gosh, that guy hit a lot of home runs, you know? But I had people would stop and go, the Morristown Masher was on deck, and the bases were loaded, and the Smokies were down, and I just knew he was going to hit a home run. And my wife's looking at me and she's going, get out, gotta get in the house, And I'm like, I just can't get out of the car. Those are the biggest compliments that we get because that's what we're trying to do. We're just storytellers here. And we're trying to lock you in on the story of that particular night's baseball game or the season or the players, But I absolutely love it when people say that and you get that kind of a compliment.
And on that note, are you ready to tell some anecdotes?
Yeah, let's do it.
You mentioned the curse of the Billy Goat. Cubs won the World Series, curse broken. Let's tell animal stories with regard to the ballpark, baseball, anytime that animals have been a part of the game. You want to start?
Yeah. Well, the Smokies Stadium right now is in Kodak, Tennessee, which is off the beaten path, right? I mean, there's 6,000 people that live in Kodak or something. But it's right off the exit that Interstate 40 that you use to get to Dollywood and Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, which is a huge tourist attraction, right? But the stadiums, I mean, it's kind of, you can see it from the interstate, but it's by itself. I mean, and there's a lot of woods around there. And so there was a year, and I don't know why, but there were a lot of bats. And you'd see them, they'd be in the lights, eating and, really feasting. So maybe they would eat so much that they would just not be able to fly. But I mean, in the middle of games, they would crash right down on the field. And watching the players, some dudes were scared to death of these bats. And some guys, they didn't care. They scoop them right up. I remember, a trainer coming out with a towel and getting one. I think that was Nick Frangella. And then I've got one more story that I remember.
Yeah.
So there was this cat one time. This was the funny part about it is that people remembered this particular incident more than they remembered really anything else about my broadcast. There was a cat running around the field, right? And they couldn't catch it. It was darting in and out, and this was definitely a stray cat. It wasn't domesticated. So they finally caught it, right? One of the ushers caught it. Someone caught it. Someone on the field caught it, right? And they walked it over to one of the ushers. And this cat is scared to death. It's got very sharp claws. The guy's holding it like this, doing this, right? And and we had the TV broadcast going, and I'm watching the video, and the dude takes the cat and is going to hand it to the usher. Well, the cat started to move, and so he throws the cat on the usher, and the cat starts scratching this guy. Yeah, the back of the cat's hair is standing up. The dude's trying to hold this cat as it's scratching him. And I couldn't stop laughing. I mean, I was just glad that the guy was okay. But it made me laugh. And I'm, describing the action, because that's what you're supposed to do. And when I saw that, they kept playing that thing over and over in the stadium. And that cat, hit the ground. And I mean, out of the stadium so fast, I don't know if he ever came back.
I'll start with a dog story. Dog Days of Summer is now a thing, and I'm someone who grew up with a dog, but there's a part of me which is leery that what if something goes wrong? What if two dogs don't get along? Who knows? We've never had any troubles with Dog Days of Summer. However, I've been on a lot of teams where our groundskeeper has a pet dog, and in general, the dog lives at the ballpark with the groundskeeper. Same thing. Same experience, right? Groundskeeper with the dog. Well. Yep. Lansing is hosting South Bend. During the game, the dog, which we have not had any troubles with the entire year, the dog knows exactly what it should do. It gets loose on the field. One thing you should know about this dog is a people dog. That is, find somebody, go to that person, and receive the love that you are due. And so South Bend is in the field.
Right.
And this was the quickest way I've ever found out who is a dog lover and who is not a dog lover. Because the dog tears out through that left center gate, and the South Bend left fielder was gone back toward the dugout. And the South Bend center fielder was at that dog's side in a heartbeat and was rubbing the dog's belly,
That's
and the
funny.
dog was having the time of its life. And the largest boos that I heard all season were for when they went and they took the dog back and put him back in the groundskeeper's shed for the rest of the game. Because the crowd just wanted nothing more than to see that dog in the center
They wanted-
fielder.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a dog, and they probably still have one that was part of like Myrtle Beach's, like, you know, it was like this dog that would like bring the balls to the umpire, you know. So this was before Myrtle Beach was a Cubs affiliate, right? I worked in the Carolina League for 1 year, and I was friends with the broadcaster of the Pelicans, right? The Myrtle Beach team. And part of his job was that he had to live with this dog that was part of the, like he was on, the dog was like a featured act. Like he had like a special like shirt that he wore, and he's on like the cover of their like, programs and stuff, like just, he's everywhere. He's like this special, like, cool dog. But I hear this guy, he's telling me, he's like, I hate whatever the dog's name was. I want to say it was Duke or whatever. He's like, I hate this dog. I said, why? I live with him. And he poops in the house all the time. I got to clean it up. And if I make food, he steals it. Like, I get this picture, like, all I see is like all the merch, like he's got his own stuffed animal. This dog's like bringing balls and bats out on the field, and like he does all his tricks. But to this guy, he's living with this terrible manners, this dog, and it was just so funny, like listening to the stories about, cleaning up those piles of poop in the house that they shared, and, and thinking like, you're not even the star of this show here. It's the dog. Like no one cares about the minor league broadcast. They want to see the dog.
You don't know the real dog. I know the real dog.
Yeah, you don't even know who he is. Yeah, okay.
We're in Dayton, Ohio. There was a little bit of a rustling commotion around the fifth inning. Didn't think anything of it. Groundskeeper's tarp rolled up just past our dugout first base side. Well, the Lansing Lugnuts have a comfortable lead, 10-3, and that lead starts to disappear. Couple of runs here, a couple of runs there. We go to the bottom of the ninth, Lugnuts leading 10-9 over Dayton. Might have been 1 out, maybe 2 outs. Lugnuts trying to lock this one up. The commotion's cause is revealed. Here comes a skunk wandering out right next to our dugout. The skunk takes first base, steps off its lead, and we're giving room, and the skunk tries to steal second. Arrives there without a throw.
Oh.
Makes a right turn at second base. Yeah. Heads into right center. And we're all thinking, I would compare a skunk to a lion in terms of there's nowhere that you can be that's far enough away. You giving it all the space that it needs. You'd rather be in a different zip code. And there goes the skunk ambling out to right center. So we've got an outfielder who's brave enough to try to friendly style, walk up to the skunk, hello, hospitably, and herd the skunk to the left center gate. And now we've got our outfielders herding the skunk, working in tandem. Let's keep walking this way. And the skunk, very friendly, walking along the warning track all the way toward that left center gate. And the crowd's anticipation is growing. They're going to herd the skunk right outside. And the skunk reaches the gate and just keeps on going to the left field corner. So now the grounds crew gets involved, and they grab a huge hamper, which they dump over the skunk. They get the skunk out. It's an 8 or 9 minute delay. I only found out afterward when the players asked me, you realize that the skunk sprayed their groundskeepers, right?
Yeah.
Well, they won the game. They came back and they beat us in the bottom of the ninth. Rally skunk, 11-10.
There's that new team in Huntsville, like with that ridiculous
Pandas.
name, the Trash Pandas. You know, like I've never met anyone in my life, and I'm an expert on, you know, like Southern nicknames. You know, like I get it. A flapjack
Yes.
is a pancake. You know, a pancake's a pancake. You know, hot cake's a pancake. Like I get it. There's a lot of names for the same thing, right? But the whole idea of a trash panda, like what? Why? Well, I think it's because when Huntsville had the baseball team, the Stars, they had skunks that would come on the field all the time. They even had a skunk mascot. So I'm guessing that's a play off of that. I wasn't there when a skunk was actually out on the field, but one thing I don't want to do is get sprayed by a skunk.
Raccoons.
I just don't, that's not an experience.
I've heard you don't mess with a raccoon.
No, I've never tried. So my grandfather was a, you know, like a raccoon hunter, and he raised like coon dogs, and people would buy them like they were like, you know, purebred, like, you know, racing dogs. Oh, raccoons are trash pans. See, that's
I got Carrie's
so I don't
back
even
there.
know that. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Gary. Yeah, I see. I'm totally off. So I have no idea why they named their team the Trash Pandas. If it's not because of the skunk,
do they?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Has anyone ever said there's a trash panda outside, and it's been a raccoon?
Just because I haven't heard it doesn't mean I don't
Exactly.
In Rocket City, they're the trash pandas.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like if they just like someone just made that up. I know what we'll call them. You know, like they just made up the term.
Well, think about
anyway.
all the different kind of team mascots that are animals that now exist. I mean, do you know what a sod poodle is?
Yeah, another one. I'm just not into that, you know? No.
Were you happy when the Chihuahuas were named?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the Chihuahuas.
So it's the nickname for the
that's a thumbs up for me. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, you know, I thought like this is great, you know, Chihuahua. And I like biscuits. And I like you know, jumbo shrimp, and I like shuckers, but you know, like I just feel like trash pandas is a big stretch.
On animals, do the jumbo shrimp serve shrimp? And how big do they get?
Yes, I think so. But the J's, like, you know, like the shrimp makes a J, so it's just like the shrimp, you know, like it. And then they have there's one logo that they have that the J wraps around the state of Florida. Kevin tells me that Trash Panda's #1 merch sales in MLB. I didn't even know they had merchandise yet. Like, they haven't even played a game.
Once you release that logo,
but that's why they do it, right? That's why.
You release that logo, you put it out. Hey, here you go. Same thing with the Vibes, the Rocky Mountain Vibes, and right on down, all the different teams, the Amarillo, Sod Poodles. And you know what's coming up next? We now have 4 days until the Copa de la Diversión reveal for all of the new teams this year. Is Tennessee part of Copa?
I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
We're pretty excited in Lansing. Not revealing anything. It makes me feel like the Avengers Endgame actors where they can't reveal any spoilers or else Marvel and Disney will send a hit squad to them. I know.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, well.
When it comes to animal anecdotes, insects. Insects are the bane of my existence as a broadcaster. They are my biggest worry because I'm allergic to getting stung.
Mm-hmm.
And every single summer, the yellow jackets or the hornets that pop in, and I see newer, bigger stinging insects each year. So what I do, Mick, is I tell my co-broadcaster, you've got to be the assassin for me. And we have killed wasps and yellow jackets and hornets in the broadcast booth on the air with the Baseball America Prospect Handbook live in the midst of play-by-play before. Here's the pitch. Wham!
Yeah. Well, I needed you guys. Yeah, no, I needed you guys last year. I was on the air with Ron Coomer here in Arizona, and you know, it was the 9th inning. The game's about to be over. I'm like, feel something on my head. I thought these headsets are, I'm going to scare you right now. This is a true story. Like these headsets are they're just bugging me. Pun intended. So I took my hand to like adjust the headsets. Lo and behold, it was a bee. And he stung me right on the air, on my pinky. And it hurt. And my finger swelled up and the game ended. It was terrible. And Ron was great. Like, he realized like I was in dire need. And so he just like picked up the play-by-play, while I was like, flailing around, So I've had your worst nightmare. But I survived. I'm here.
I've got respect to all those broadcasters use stick microphones. I tried it for one season. I loved it. My problem with the stick microphone is I can't run and broadcast at the same time. So if I get dive bombed and I need to leave that microphone, there's no way for people to hear me. But if I'm wearing my headset, I can go to the back of the booth and still call the game.
Yeah. I've got Pat Hughes told me what microphone to use, and I got it. And it's a stick mic, and that's the one that I'm used to calling games on. And, Len and I use the stick mics here. And then I use the stick mics at home during the summer. But on the road, I use the headset. Partly because I've got my own road kit, and so it just makes it easier just to have like all that stuff in the box, and I don't have to take anything out of there. It's just ready to go.
I worry about, and you see these games happen in Arizona every single year, when the bees overwhelm the stadium. It's just the swarm attack.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And that would be scary. My grandfather, like the same one that raised the coon dogs, he also had bees. He had a farm, so he had bees. And sometimes the bees leave the hive, and he'd have to go out and collect the bees back up and put them in the hive. I don't even know how that would happen, But he'd say that, like, like there'd be like some kind of like, mite would get in there. He'd have to kill it, or, like some kind of virus the bees would get. They'd leave. He'd go get them. Like his bees would be like the whole hive would be like on a tree,
Yeah.
Just like you see on the like on TV, when they're all like kind of like hanging out on like like a post out, in right field, and then he'd go out there. He'd have his bee outfit. And somehow he would just get the bees and get them home. I always wondered that. Like, I guess it's the queen. You find the queen. I don't know. But I mean, like, I wouldn't want to be out there for that either. Right? I mean, like, I was thinking, like, I don't want to do that. Like, he'd have this thing, like, it had like smoke in it. And he would do that. He'd puff the thing, and the smoke would come out. And the bees, they didn't like that, so they wouldn't, if they got that smoke, they didn't bite you, or sting.
Yeah, that's not the point.
Some bees do bite, though.
Look, it's Florence and now Hartford with their peanut-free ballparks because of people who have peanut allergies. If you could assure me of a bee, wasp, yellow jacket-free stadium where I wouldn't have to worry and it wouldn't harm the environment, if you could take care of my peace of mind, boy, that would be a great thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to hear about the peanut-free nights, and think, whatever. And then I got like a nut allergy, like a tree nut allergy, and it is so severe. And I got to tell you, like, if they want to take all the peanuts out, and you really do have to get all of the nuts out, do it, because it's so awful. And I can't imagine someone having a more severe allergy to peanuts than I do to tree nuts, particularly pistachios, which, by the way, I love to eat. I mean, they'll just kill me, but I do love to eat them. I don't eat them.
We need you around.
But I mean, like, yeah, well, yeah. I always wonder, like, who's cooking for me, and are they trying to put a pistachio in there? But anyway, I love when they do that, though. I mean, because it would be so awful not to be able to go to a game because of a peanut.
Makes me think of the Dimitri Martin joke that some people have seizures caused by flashing lights, and yet there's still strobe lights in this world. So what? We could get rid of them,
Yeah.
but people need to party. Just to paraphrase that joke a little bit, I like the idea of looking out for people with allergies. Latex allergies. All right, so latex-free areas, or whatever it might be. Let's make sure that
Right.
everybody can enjoy this baseball.
No
Hey,
doubt, man.
Mick,
Well, this was fun.
a lot of
Can
fun.
you
It's
believe it?
another hour completed. We went deep into baseball broadcasting philosophy, and we talked about snocone right from the start, from snocone all the way back around to tree nuts. And in between, we talked Cubs World Series championship. We told some stories. Like, thank you.
Hey, it's fun. Let's do it again next
Talking
week.
about baseball, the broadcaster chat. Thanks to Ballpark Digest at Ballpark Digest on Twitter. Big thanks to Kevin Reichard, and check them out ballparkdigest.com. He's Mick Gillispie. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Have a good week.